Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais with another episode of Health Declassified. And this is where we uncover the truth behind health and wellness. And we do that by bringing you expert guests in various fields of health and wellness. And today will be no exception. But first, let's say hello to co host Kathleen. Kathleen, how are you doing today?
Oh, Peter, I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you all so very much for tuning in to our show. We so appreciate having you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. We are so privileged to welcome Susie Kundrat to the show. Hello, Susie. How are you?
I am great. I am very happy to be here with you both. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, let me give you a little bit of background about Susie. She's an award-winning author, an energetic wellness keynote speaker, and a registered dietitian nutritionist. She's also the author of the book Eat, Move, Groove: Unlock the Simple Steps to Lifelong Nutrition, Fitness, and Wellness. And today, she is here to chat with us about simple, positive ways to eat, move, and groove. So let's just jump right in. Susie, there are many differing opinions about nutrition and diet. I mean, let's face it, we go from veganism to the carnivore diet and everything else in between. What is your definition of a good balanced diet?
Well, you bring up a great point because it is somewhat controversial, but I think what I truly believe in my 35 years as a dietitian and teaching nutrition and exercise most of my career, excuse me, is that we can tease out the things we know to be true.
Mhm.
And which is really what I've done with Eat Move Group is said, well, what are the things that absolutely are beneficial to all of us? And one of those is basing your diet in a, what I call plant forward diet, plant forward eating plan, with flexibility. So if someone wants to eat a vegetarian diet, that's great. That's fine. If they want to include meat and dairy and animal products, they can do that and still eat super healthy. So I think the flexibility piece is really important,
Mhm.
but with my plan, it starts with really the what I call the power two or the double P or the 22, which is 2 cups of produce at a meal and at least 2 ounces of protein. Because in all the work I do, when we think about longevity, we know we want to eat more fruits and vegetables. I mean, absolutely, that is something that is going to help us. And we also know we need to maintain our lean mass. We need to stay strong. And we need to make sure that our muscles and our bones and our tissues are fueled and energized. And that's where over time, I just believe that if we can keep it simple and say, let's start the meal with at least 2 cups of produce and at least 2 ounces of high quality protein, that's the start. That's what I call the 22. And then we add in an 11, which is one whole grain or starch and one healthy fat source. So it's kind of it's a simple way for people to think about, okay, I'm thinking of my next meal. Where's my produce? Where's my protein? Then I can add in a whole grain or starch. I can add in some healthy fat source, maybe half an avocado or some Italian vinaigrette or something like that onto that meal. And I truly believe that no matter what we learn about nutrition, those things pretty much stay. We know we want to eat a lot of fiber. We know we want to get as close to, whole food as we can. We
Mhm.
know we want to make sure that we are fueling our gut, for example. And getting plenty of produce in there does that. Then we can look more closely at things like, well, what kind of proteins might really be most beneficial? Well, adding something like yogurt or kefir or fermented source might be wonderful. Or maybe you add kimchi as your one of your veggie sources, a little bit of that. That's great. But what I've found through the years is people get so confused
Mhm.
that they end up often not doing anything or saying, well, I did this, now I'm switching way to this. And I'm saying, let's keep it simple, let's keep it basic, but definitely plant forward, high quality protein, then add that whole grain or starch for more energy and a healthy fat. And so that is my 2211 plan. And what I've learned over the years is that whether I'm working individually with clients or I've spent a lot of my time working with athletes from high school to the professional and Olympic ranks, and even some Canadian athletes, which has been fun. But what I find is that keeping it simple like this allows people to actually put it into practice.
Right.
And this is what I'm hearing. We've just gotten back from about an 8-month Eat, Move, Groove wellness tour all over the US, but we're coming to Canada and we're also going to go international. And what people are telling me is that, wow, I can do this. Those are the 4 words I love to hear.
Right.
And the simplicity of it, but it's all based in solid science. And so that's what I truly believe with all of my years, whether it's been research, teaching, or application with consumers, that we can keep it that simple, and we are then utilizing what the research is telling us.
And more
Mhm.
importantly, it can work for everyone,
Yes.
from athletes
Yes.
to elderly people that don't
Yes.
exercise as much. It's
Right. Right.
okay.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
can
it
work for
sounds
everyone.
good. Good. We'll get into diet in a little bit more detail in a moment, but I've got something that intrigues me, that puzzles me. And I read recently that the average life expectancy for both men and women in North America increased from 1940 onwards by a little bit every year, sometimes more than a little bit, up until 2 years ago. And I'm not sure if it's the whole of North America, but I read a report that's saying in the USA, life expectancy for American men decreased for 2 consecutive years. And I think it stayed the same for women. What do you put that down to, Susie?
Well, one of the things I think of first is we have this term that's pretty commonplace now called exercise is medicine, that you've all subscribed to too, I know. And I do think it's easy for people to be quite sedentary.
Hmm.
And it's also, and I think that probably has something to do with it. I mean, I haven't read that specific report you're mentioning, but it's becoming easier and easier and easier for people to not move very much. And I think
Yep.
that's a big problem. Some of that I think is a misconception where folks think that if I'm not getting out and working out hard, why do anything? And we do know that even getting these short bursts of activity serves as medicine, even 1, 2, 3 minutes here and there to get
Yep.
your heart rate up and get that blood flowing. And so there are ways to do that in the day that don't have to be difficult to do. And I know when we think about not only the movement part, but it's also kind of easy to not eat well too.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I believe it's easy to eat well, but you do have to think about it a little bit ahead of time. And for some people, that may be pretty difficult also. And I'm sure there are a lot of other factors, but I think when it comes to longevity, there are these things that we absolutely know to be truths. For example, we do know when people meet that 5 to 6, US cups of fruits and vegetables a day, that really does boost our
Hmm.
opportunities for longer life and a healthier life. And as we all want, increasing that health span, not only lifespan. So that, for example, is a simple thing to do. And if you take our US and Canadian guidelines for exercise, that 150 minutes a week of what I call in the book purposeful movement,
Hmm.
where our heart rate is up and we're breathing more heavily, or what we might call cardiovascular exercise, you divide that down by 7, and again, you get 22, which
Hmm.
is the base of what I work with people on in
Right.
the Eat,
Two
Move,
and
Groove
two.
plan, right? So it has to be something we remember, and it has to be something doable. And as you mentioned, Kathleen, it has to be flexible and inclusive. So
Hmm.
Right.
everyone feels like this is something they can put into place. And so several years ago, when I was teaching full time at the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, and I was teaching in nutrition, our nutritional sciences program, but also in the kinesiology department.
Mhm.
And many of my courses mix nutrition and exercise. I kept thinking to myself, especially because students would come to me saying, "Oh, now I'm cutting out all carbs and I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this." And There's so much confusion. I said, wow, we in the health field have to figure out a way to make things memorable and simple ourselves, because we talk a lot about, especially as registered dietitians, we talk a lot about being, having flexibility and making sure that people have lots of choice, and all that is well and good. But I firmly believe we have to have some framework. So I call what I'm doing, whether I'm working in the corporate setting or working with large organizations or one-on-one with someone, we've got to have that framework, which in my case is this 2211 framework,
Mm-hmm.
but there has to be flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It has to include foods we love. I call them love foods in the book. What foods you absolutely love that of course you're going to eat, no matter the nutritional value. All that stuff fits in, right? Just like moving, we have to find ways we love to move so we continue to do it. It doesn't have to be one set way. But yet I do think what we've missed out on, at least in my field in dietetics, has been providing enough of a framework for
Mm-hmm.
people. You even look at the DASH diet or the MIND diet,
Mhm.
and certainly my book is based on a lot of that research looking at these diets that have been helpful with disease prevention. They're quite cumbersome. There's a lot to keep
Mm-hmm.
track of. You got to do this and this and this and this and this.
Mhm.
It's too much in my estimation. So let's simplify things and let's get them down so that on a daily basis, on a meal by meal basis, you start fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's not something that we health professionals often do,
Yeah.
but it's something that people in marketing do.
Yeah.
So how can we sort of blend it so that it's easy for people?
So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to
Yeah.
exercise, I just want to clarify, when it comes to an exercise regimen, say for the week, you're saying how many minutes per day? Like 20 some minutes per day or what,
22.
22 minutes?
22. So if you take those 150 minutes per week,
Okay.
divide it down, it's roughly 22 minutes of cardiovascular or purposeful movement. I like to call it where your heart's beating more quickly than normal, you're breathing more heavily than normal. And then it ends up being, when we think about the strength stretching, the stability and strength work,
Right.
I recommend 11 minutes a day. So again, we get to that 22-11 for eating and for moving. And
And for
people can
moving.
remember that.
Yeah.
And that might be stability exercise where you're brushing your teeth and you're on one foot for a minute
Mm-hmm.
here. And then it may be you're taking a break. I'm a big believer when you're sitting, you get up every hour. You might do push-ups on the wall. You might go up and down the stairs where you're breathing heavily and you're also working your quads. So simple, doable things that will get us that cardio exercise and get us that strength in a day. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I find from, again, clients and groups I work with is that, wow, yes, we got those 150 minutes of cardiovascular. We've got, 30 minutes of strength twice a week. We've got that goal. We've got, how am I going to get all this in? And so let's simplify it to a daily idea. And maybe you don't get it every day, but if you do most days, great. And it might be, for example, one of my favorite things to do is play pickleball,
Mm.
along with a lot of people. And so when I'm going to go out and play pickleball, I'll probably play for 90 minutes. I'm not just going to play for 22, but I know that that 22 is sort of my daily base
Mm-hmm.
that I'm shooting for the cardiovascular. And
Mm-hmm.
we know as people age, and like you said, Peter, when we look at longevity, the piece that many people don't do is the strength work.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Yes.
one of a wonderful Canadian I interviewed for my book, Stu Phillips, who is an expert in strength, among other things with exercise. His big thing that he talks about is, find something that you'll do consistently from a workout standpoint, and adding that strength in so that we can maintain that lean mass. And then when we maintain our muscle, of course, that is going to help us with metabolism and moving our body and having fewer injuries and all kinds of things. And one of the biggest things I love about the strength part is that when people strengthen, they feel better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can feel it. You can
Absolutely.
feel the difference, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm a big believer that if we feel better, we're eating better, we feel better, our gut feels better, we're more regular, all these things kind of add up and piggyback on our own personal
Sure.
well-being. And pretty soon we're doing pretty well and we want to
That's
keep
right.
doing it.
So
Yeah. Well, a quick one on the exercise is Kathleen and I have done quite a lot of reading about the blue zones around the world where many people, more than average numbers, live to over 100. And there's many common threads, but the one is that they all exercise or move purposely. Very few of them consciously exercise. They don't go to the gym, but they work in their gardens, they go fishing, they gather fruit. We saw that one, Kathleen, the guy was 92 and he's on a little motorbike going to work at 92. So they're all
Yeah.
moving. And I, as I said earlier, I lived a lot of my life in Africa and amongst rural black people who are not exposed very much to Western diets and fast foods. The kids walk to school 3, 4, 5 miles a day to school and come home and work in the family plot to grow vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
very few of them suffer from heart attacks, diabetes, or
Right.
cancer, right? So interesting parallel. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
me. What do you think about intermittent fasting, Susie?
I think if you feel good doing it, it's okay. I would say one caveat to begin with. Many people I've worked with say they feel better if they kind of, bring their, whether you call it intermittent fasting or TRE, time restricted eating, if they kind of bring that into a smaller length of time
Mhm.
during the day. So, you know, for example, someone might normally get up and eat breakfast at 7. Well, maybe they eat at 8 and they stop eating at 6. Okay, so they're kind of consciously narrowing that time. We have some research to indicate for some people it might help with blood sugar regulation. It might
Mhm.
help certainly with weight management and some other things. Um, One of the, I guess, cautions I would have for anybody who does that is to make sure you feel okay doing it. Make sure emotionally and psychologically you're comfortable with it, because anytime we get some restriction with our eating, and if you are hungry and you're not eating, that can lead into some disordered eating patterns or stress around eating. And so I'm always very cautious with young people with that type of
Mhm.
eating, or anyone who has any history of eating concerns. I don't think it's really necessary, but I do think that if it works for someone, it's fine. And that kind of gets into the whole thing. Some people feel better eating more meat, some people feel better eating less meat. Being aware of how you feel, and maybe even nowadays, being able to get some genetic testing around
Mhm.
your eating and what might work better for you. We know everyone's different. So I always leave some room and some
Sure.
flexibility for that. And I also talk to folks about, what's your day look like? And, for me, for example, I love to get up. I love to exercise in the morning. It's just,
Mhm.
to me, it's a wonderful time to be active. Then it sets me up for the whole day. So if I'm going to do that and I'm up at 6 and I'm getting exercise and I'm back at 7, I'm going to be ready to eat. So I'm not going to not eat at that point. I'm going to make sure I eat for recovery from my exercise and because I'm hungry. And so I think it can be, I guess that's a long answer, but I think time restricted eating can be helpful because it does increase awareness
Mhm.
and say, wow, I've been eating at night and I really don't need to. I'm really not hungry. And those are extra calories I don't need. So for some people, they find they can get leaner, they can lose a little weight just by being aware of the time they're eating and
Mhm.
maybe bringing that together. So it can be very positive as long as it doesn't make someone feel guilty, or they're not eating when they're hungry. They're not listening to their body now. They're only looking at the clock. I don't recommend that. That can
No.
be problematic.
right.
Mm. I can
So
just tell you very briefly, sorry, Kathleen, that my experience, I put on a bit of weight last year and I've been eating a healthier diet for a good couple of years, getting better and better all the time, but I still could not lose weight around my middle. But I'm 75 and I know it goes with age as well. So I
Yeah.
started intermittent fasting in February and I slowed my window down. So now I eat supper at between 5:30 and 6 in the evening, and I do not eat again until midday the next day. All right, nothing solid.
Mhm.
I'll have tea, a green tea.
Yes.
I also get up at 5:30 and walk for 50 minutes every morning, and I do that without feeling tired. And it's worked for me, and I have lost 15 pounds with virtually no
Mhm.
other changes since Christmas. I also find, and this is a little bit the other side of the argument you were making, which I quite support. For me, the discipline of not eating is good. Um,
Mhm.
it's an achievement, if you like, and
Mhm.
I also find that if for any reason I'm away and I can't get a decent lunch, then it's not a problem because I'm used to going without food for so long. It works for me.
Mhm.
But I've also read, and this is your advice to exercise caution, that for women in particular, it's more important to have some protein early in the morning, more important than
Mhm.
men. So again, as you said, everyone should see how their body feels.
Right.
Thank you for that. Sorry,
It-
Kathleen, I was going off on another one of my hobby horses. So back to you.
No, but it is difficult to address proper nutrition and not address the impact that it would have or it has on hormones. What do you recommend nutritionally for women, say, going through menopause? Because the diet you may have followed in your 20s and you may have eaten properly isn't working so much now that you're over 40, 50
Right.
and going through menopause. And it's, you know, you feel your metabolism slowing and you think, what the heck? What do I do?
Yeah. Right. The hormones, our hormones change, our
Mhm.
bodies change. We don't necessarily respond to food the way we used to. And of course, our metabolism is slowing and we're losing some lean mass. And so we're not burning as many calories. All those things are happening. So there's two things I recommend, really in your 40s for women in particular, and then going into menopause. And those two things are maybe shifting more of your carbohydrate intake to vegetables and lower sugar fruits. Maybe we cut our grains down a little bit. That might be a little higher calorie. And we go more towards this 22-11 idea, but especially with a lot of veggies, because veggies, as we know, quite low calorie. We get full, good fiber, all those things we need. And so making that shift. And then the other thing I recommend is really focusing on protein at least 3 times a day, because high quality protein is imperative for, as we know, maintaining our muscle mass.
Mhm.
And the biggest shift, one of the biggest shifts that we see during menopause is maybe losing muscle mass and increasing body fat, right? And so, and not feeling good. And of course, we start being more concerned about bone health and those things too during that time. And so, trying to think about, okay, if I were to make two shifts in my diet, one would be eating more veggies as part of my carb intake. The other one really being focused on protein. And we don't have full agreement with everyone on protein intake, but we do know that probably somewhere around 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram per day of protein now, especially at that time, is helpful. So maybe somewhere around at least 1.2 to 1.4 grams per kilogram per day divided by 3. Then I recommend
Mhm.
people divide that fairly evenly, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's a lot more. That's, at least 50% more than our general recommendations in the US and Canada. And so what that might be is where someone might have normally had a bowl of cereal for breakfast and a banana. Okay, that's fine, but we've got to add in maybe a 20-gram protein Greek yogurt with that now. We've got to really bump that up, particularly early in the day. And of course, we know that increasing protein early in the day can really help with satiety, helps
Mhm.
us feel more satisfied. We are fueling muscle. So when I speak to groups, again, I might be in a corporation where I am helping people have high energy during the day to work, feel good, more blood flow to the brain, being able to accomplish more. So everything goes well for that corporation or that team. Part of what we're going to do is really take some of that protein and push it early in the day,
Mhm.
because that's when we want our bodies to be functioning well, whether it's the mind or the muscle. And so I kind of have this saying where I talk about it's all about the muscle. Everything else follows. If we fuel our muscle and we're active, and the third piece of that, the veggies, the protein, I would say the focus has to be strength training.
Mhm.
because we have got to make sure we are strengthening our muscles as well as getting our cardiovascular exercise so that if we can maintain that muscle and that strength during that time of menopause, then we generally are going to keep our metabolism higher too. And so we know we're fighting all this stuff. So we have to be thinking about what are some of the priorities I can do on a daily basis. And that's where even this 11 minutes, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with or who've read my book and said, wow, 11 minutes of strength training a day. I can do that.
Hmm.
Now, I might not make it to the gym, but I've got, my office, if you could see it now, I've got bands here and there. I've got a stepper that I can get on and get some real good leg work. I mean, just find these 1 or 2 minute gems during the day and you can maintain your strength. And so, at least for me, that's what works because I would rather do that than go to a gym 2 or 3 times a week. I'd rather have all my things ready and handy. But if we focus on maintaining strength and muscle, then we get all the benefit from better
Yeah.
metabolism. We feel better. We have better energy. We're more confident. We're more apt to maintain these things. And so, kind of being aware of caloric intake for sure, but then focusing on muscle. And we all know that if we maintain muscle well, that we also maintain bone better.
Mhm.
And that's something we start to be quite concerned about during menopause as women.
Yeah, very
Sure.
much so. So, Susie, you've worked with athletes, with top level athletes. What's your advice from both nutrition and exercise? So, nutrition, diet, exercise for athletes or people who've been really active physically, even if they're not top level athletes, to maintain that peak condition later in life. Have you got a special recommendation for that?
I do. I do. I think it's a matter of saying wherever I am today, let's work with that and then move forward. I think any of us who are active are athletes. So it may be, I worked for a few years with the Milwaukee Bucks, which was a
Hmm.
fantastic job and loved every moment of that. And those guys were fantastic to work with. They were training so hard, of course, and many of them were our young players at the time. And so you're training so much that nutrition just, oh my gosh, you do the right things nutrition wise, you are going to get strong so fast and you are going to recover. You're going to put on weight. You're going to do the things you need to do because of your workouts. So what I suggest to people is say, if even now, if your activity is minimal, let's find ways you can bump that up gradually. And let's find ways that, again, we can start thinking about fueling our muscle.
Hmm.
And when we do those things, we get more in the athlete mindset. Now, sometimes we get out there. I mean, sometimes I get out and play a sport and I'm thinking that I can do things I used to be able to do 40 years ago. Well, I can't quite do the same things, but so I don't eat the same way I did when I was playing college basketball, for
Sure.
example. I can't eat those calories, but you still can think about pre-exercise nutrition. You can think about what I'm doing during. Am I staying hydrated? Am I getting electrolytes? And then after the exercise, I recommend for everyone they try to get some type of recovery meal or shake or something that's easy within the hour, partly to re-energize muscles, to repair protein in the muscle tissue, to stay hydrated and to feel good and not maybe get too hungry for the next meal. Because now we're
Mm.
starting to think as we get older, we just don't need to eat as much, right?
Hmm.
So sort of getting that early satisfaction in within the hour. So um, I think we still use a lot of the same sports nutrition principles. It may
Hmm.
be in smaller amounts or sort of micro sports nutrition. But remember, everyone, if you're moving and you're exercising in any movement that you like, you are an athlete. You're moving your body. So,
Hmm.
therefore, we want to think about fueling our body in a way that makes us feel good, less sore, anti-inflammatory properties. That's very important. And so, I think it's important to think of yourself that way. If you want to be more active, you can fuel to be more active. You can make sure you have energy. Now, some people like you, Peter, you might get up and feel like I don't really need to eat anything. I can walk an hour, feel good. That's great. For others, they may not feel they have the
Sure.
energy to do that unless they get in something. So again, being aware of yourself. I call something in the book, I call the 2-minute miracle. And what that is something I've used with my college and professional athletes my whole career. Thinking the day before, just giving yourself about 2 minutes to think about, well, how might I best fuel myself? How might I best make sure I'm ready to move tomorrow? Whether that's getting your tennis shoes out, whether that's filling your water bottle. I had several professional athletes, I would have them fill their water bottles and put them in the shower. I know it
Yeah.
sounds crazy. But you've got that water there, you get up, you take a shower, you start drinking right away, you get pre-hydrated. Those little things make a big difference, and it only takes a couple minutes to do that. And so giving yourself that gift of thinking ahead, how am I going to care for myself, which I find is especially important for women because a lot of women are not used to doing that as
Mhm.
much. But taking that time is really critical.
Right. I
Thank
think
you.
you've pretty much answered my next question, Susie, about how much exercise should somebody that has a sedentary job be doing in a week. But I think from your perspective, it's pretty well standard. If you're getting was 150 minutes per week, and that goes for everybody, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I think trying to get that minimum level of the 150 minutes or 22 minutes a day of movement where you're breathing more heavily than normal, 11 minutes of strength stretching or stability. One of the things on our YouTube channel we have is these 5 to 6 minute breaks,
Right.
stability breaks, strength breaks. You do 2 of those a day at work, you're great for that.
And to be
And then
clear, you don't have to be sweating buckets during those 22
oh,
minutes, right?
you really don't. You want to be stressing your body,
Yeah.
and you want to be, of course, we all have different goals for our exercise, but you want to be doing something that's a little bit hard. And again, it might be 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes here, or it might be a half an hour at lunch that you're taking that time or in the morning. Do what works for you that you like to do. And then I kind of have a three-pronged approach, that 22 minutes of purposeful movement, that's more cardio, 11 minutes of strength stretching or stability, and then get up and move every hour if you can. And that might be a minute of movement. That might be, for example, when I'm working at home, if I go and warm up some water for tea or something, I'll go do that. And while I do that in the kitchen, I think to myself, okay, I have a little routine of push-ups on the counter. I have squats that I do, and I go up and down the stairs a few times. And 2 or 3 minutes later, I'm ready. I get back to work. So if you kind of program yourself to have something in mind that you're going to do for your break at work, or whether you're at home or at the office, that's really helpful
Mm.
because those things just add up and add up and add up. And so it's kind of the three part. You want to get up and move often, and then within that movement, you could pull in most of your recommended needs in a day, even if you didn't have an additional exercise opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you.
So, Susie, you've given us our audience really good idea of what they should start doing to get back on track and avoid losing muscle, build muscle. Here's a different question I just thought of while you were talking to Kathleen. With all the people you work with, do you see bad effects from too much exercise? And I'm talking about endurance sports in particular. Kathleen and I have this debate about, I used to run ultra marathons, 50 milers and more. And I think it did me good, and I think it's why I'm still in good condition. Kathleen doesn't agree with me. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it comes down to self-reflection. I have friends who are marathoners. I've run half marathons. It's not something I do now, but I've certainly done it. At the time, I
Hmm.
enjoyed it. It was great. I was in really good shape. It wasn't something I would enjoy continuing doing myself,
Sure.
but for people who do, and if they're aware to be aware of injuries and to not go too much overboard, it can really be a wonderful thing for people, this endurance or ultra endurance. I'm thinking of a client I've worked with in the past many different times, and she's an ultra endurance athlete, and she will run 50 and 100-mile races. Now, does she prepare for those? Yes, she
Right.
nutritionally prepares, psychologically. She makes sure she's training appropriately. Now, that's not something I could ever imagine myself doing, but she does it and it works well for her. She enjoys it immensely. So I think it comes down to our individual desires, and it takes a special person to be an endurance athlete, and particularly an ultra endurance athlete, because that's a lot of dedication. On the other hand, for some people, they can have a lot of injuries, or it can
Mhm.
interfere with home life, or there's a lot of things that happen when you put that kind of time into something. But um, I
But
think it
isn't
really
that
goes
overly
back.
stressing the body, though? When you're doing ultra marathons, you're really stressing the body. And that
You're
kind of
stressing the
stress
body.
really ages people as well, because it's added stress on all of your organs and especially your heart. Peter, that's what
No,
we're gonna have to agree
fair,
to disagree on
Yeah.
that.
fair comment. Fair comment. My
Mm,
last one I want to say on that though is in my case, running those ultra marathons in my 30s and early 40s set me up mentally, gave me the
mhm,
mental strength to
mhm,
endure. I don't want to go into my story; it's not my show, but to endure some really bad times when things went bad in
mhm.
Africa. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm grateful for that. Did it contribute to my heart attack? Maybe it did, maybe not. My cardiologist said the reason I survived the heart attack might be because I'd run all those marathons and kept so fit.
Mm,
Who knows? But I hear what Kathleen has to say. So anyway, that's
yeah.
enough from me. Back to you, Kathleen.
Did you
Well,
want
if
to
I
comment on
might,
that, Susie? Go ahead.
yeah, if I might just add one comment, just simply
Sure.
Sure.
because I just had a conversation with my best friends from college, and we all played sports together in college. We were all very dedicated athletes, and we had a lot of fun too. Don't get me wrong, but we were dedicated athletes and good students. And we're still very best friends now. And we were just talking about how grateful we were that we were competitive athletes, not just
Mhm.
through high school, but through college, because we had to do all these things that we probably wouldn't have done on our own. And just like you were saying, Peter, when you have to get up and lift weights for an hour in the morning and then practice for 3 hours in the afternoon, and you are so spent, but you realize your body can do it. I can do it. I wouldn't maybe want to choose to do that every day. But what you learn is resilience,
Yep.
right? And you learn that when times get rough, boy, I could do that. So I bet I can do this.
Mhm.
And all of us were commenting on how in our careers, which have all been very different, we have all been in some way or another really driven in our careers. And we've been driven to do these things we feel so passionate about.
Yep.
And we were just commenting to each other on how part of that we think is because we were athletes.
Yep.
And we now are all active. When we get together, we're all over the country in the US. And when we get together, we first say, what are we going to do? Where are we going to hike? What are we going to do? Are we going to bike, hike, kayak? Where are we going? And, what else are we going to do that's going to be fun? And then what are we going to eat? And, like we really have fun with it. But we're very aware that our well-being and our wellness for all of us is still very paramount. Now, do we have some overuse injuries now? And some of us
Sure.
are dealing with shoulder things and knees. And yes, because we probably, when you think 40 or so years ago, we probably didn't have great access to maybe the best ideas for training. We were doing things that maybe you wouldn't do now just because we didn't know any better, or our coaches didn't know any better. But I guess the point is, knowing what your body is capable of, even if we're not doing things at that level now, I
Hmm.
think has helped us through the years be more resilient in all areas of our life. So I can really empathize with you, Peter, when you're talking about that, because that's what we have just been discussing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Kathleen.
Well, our time has almost come to a close, Susie, unfortunately, but how do people contact you and how do they get your book?
Yes, thank you so much. Our website is Eat Move Groove all together, and we're at Eat Move Groove on Instagram. and Facebook. And our YouTube channel is Eat, Move, Groove on YouTube. So any of those ways you can get a hold of us through our website. We do have an email newsletter that we put out Wellness Wednesdays every Wednesday, and quick tips, maybe new review on research, anything we have upcoming. So that people really enjoy getting that as well. And just staying in touch, we would love that. We love building our community. We call them Eat Move Groovers. And if folks are really interested in how to take care of themselves with simple, positive, fun things they can do, that's really what we're all about. And coming wherever you come from, whatever place you are now in your life, that is great. We love to have people who are interested in any number of things, or even interested in health concerns. One of the things I wrote into the book was if you do have high cholesterol or have GI concerns or looking for anti-inflammation, this is how the plan works for you. So that flexibility and inclusiveness was very important to me when I set out to develop the Eat, Move, Groove system. So thank you. Yes.
And you
Right.
work with people from all over the world.
All over the world. Yes, because
Wonderful.
our plan really works across cultures. It works across different
Sure.
backgrounds, different types of food. And no matter where you look, these principles from science to simple, as I call it, from the research, really, really can play out wherever you live, however you eat, however you move. And then we didn't talk a lot about the groove, but those are all the ways to take care of our well-being too, which of course is so important too.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susie. Very good.
Thank
And
you so much for having me. I've
oh,
thoroughly enjoyed it.
it was our pleasure, Susie. Thank you. And thank you all once again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.